Alright guys, so what we're going to do now is we're going to start looking at the blueprints scripting system and adding some interactive elements. Okay, so hopefully you've spent some time practicing, adding in geometry, editing geometry, adding in materials and whatnot to put together like a basic map. I've just done a real basic little scene here with a few little houses, if you want to call them that. And also I've put in some of the little props and things that some of you have found, some of you might not have done. So if I just come over here, go to the starter content, as well as using architecture and the materials that we did before, you've also got some pre-made sort of 3D models there in the props folder. And also if you really want, in the particles folder, there's some pre-made particle systems there as well, like fire and things. But don't really need to worry about too much about that. If you want to play around with it at the moment though, that's fine. What you may notice, just quickly, is that some of the objects, like if I see this chair here, they don't have any collision settings, so I can just walk straight through them. This one though, this one does. So some of them randomly do, some of them randomly don't. Some of them, like this table, I can walk into and it has, can shoot it and stuff like that. So, how do you fix that? Well, basically, if I go back to the props folder where these things are, so I know that this couch one doesn't have any collisions because I can just walk through it. So if I double click the couch, it opens it up in a separate little window, and I can just go up to collision and I would add this one, the 26 one. And you can see this green box that now appears around it. That's like the collision box that's set up. So I'm just going to save that, close that bit down. And now if I come over here, I can't walk into that now. Or jump up onto it. But yeah. And also, so this little table, so I could walk into it and push it about. So if I double click the table, what we probably will see over here, if we can find it. Probably got that hidden in somewhere. It's not immediately obvious where it is in there, but I'll give you a different example. So if I made this cube like we did before, lifted it up. So normally, if you shoot it, things bounce off it, you walk into it, you just bump into it. But with that, if I come over here and just tick simulate physics, see that's already dropped to the ground and I can hit it and it moves around and things. So that's the same as what this has got on it. Okay. But when you push escape and come out, everything reverts back to its original place. I just can't see. Oh, there it is. Okay, so when I click the table, it's just there. Simulate physics. So it's not when you go into it. It's just there on the left. Okay, if you so wished to do that. Okay, so I'm just going to delete that. Other little mop-up things. So some of you, I noticed with your work that when you had lights in your game, you had the word preview on the ground. It often appears in like shadows and things. I'm not going to be able to get it to happen now. It's not going to happen for me, but for a lot of you it did happen. And it does happen to me at sometimes. Oh, there you go. So see now it's just started to create this word preview on the ground. When it does that, it means that when we talked about lighting needing building, if you go up to there and build the lighting, it will recalculate everything and the word preview will be gone. It says preview because it hasn't calculated the lighting properly, even though you put that light in. So it may well look different when you actually build the lighting. So just bear that in mind. Okay. With that being said, let's start looking at this blueprint system. So what we're going to do, if you go to this folder called First Person BP, you see we've got a folder called Blueprints, which already has a couple of blueprints in it. One for the character. So if I double click the character blueprint, it opens up this separate window, and you can see an example here of how this blueprint scripting works and what it looks like. Okay, so you've got these kind of nodes which all link up to each other, which tell everything what it's doing. And it does get quite complex. Okay, but I'm not expecting you guys to master this system. I'm just hoping that you get the foundations and the basics, so you can make some modifications and customizations of your own. Okay, so let's close that down. What we're going to do is we're going to create our own blueprint, and it's going to be a real simple one. It's just going to be something that's going to turn a light on and off again. So super simple. So if I right click in this space, go to blueprint class, I can make a new blueprint. So ultimately a blueprint is just an object that has an interactive element to it. Okay, because as you notice, we can drop stuff into the game, like I did with these buildings and things. They're not blueprints, but they don't do anything. You know, there's part of the environment. So something that needs interactivity needs to be a blueprint. So I'm going to make this one an actor. The descriptions of what each thing is here, and we'll go through the rest of them at some point. But at the moment, we're just starting with the one that's an actor, and it's just an object that can be placed or is spawned into the world, and it doesn't do anything else. Okay, it can't be controlled by like a controller or something. Okay, so click actor, give it a name. So that's annoying. Interactive light, something will be fine. Just bear in mind when you're naming things, you can't include spaces. Okay, so what I normally do is start each word with a capital. Okay, so what I've done there is I just double click the light. If it opens like this, it's not what you want to see. You can just click up there. It should open like this view or this view maybe. But you've got 3 different tabs along here. Okay, so you start in the viewport tab. So this window is the blueprint editing window. Okay, so the viewport is going to be what our blueprint actually is and what we're going to see when we drop this into the game. Okay, so remember I'm just creating a light. So if I go to add component, I'm going to add in a point light. Okay, and there we can see the light. To move around in this view is the same as before in the editor. Just hold down right click and move with WASD. Couple of points, you see this little like sphere that's behind it. You can just kind of ignore that. That's just an indicator. You wouldn't actually see that when you drop this blueprint into the game. So point light, and we've got all our settings for the light as normal over here. Okay, so I can make the light, let's make it like bright pink, shall we? And make it really bright, double the intensity of that. Okay, so that's the light that's going to turn on, and what we also need is what's called a collision box. So if I go to add component, often, you know, so many things in here you'll need to search for things. So there's a search box up there. So I'm just going to type in box collision. Okay, and you can see this like orange, like boundary box. Okay, and that's the collision box, the area that the character can walk into, and it's going to trigger the event to happen. All right, so again, I can come over to the settings for the box, and I'm going to make it bigger. I'm going to make it 5 times bigger on each axis. Okay, so my blueprint at the moment is this boundary box, the collision box, and the light inside. Okay, so exactly what I want, so that's fine. So I'm going to go over now to the event graph, which is where we put in all the blueprint scripting to tell it what to do. Okay, so by default you always get these 3 little nodes here. So essentially I'll just explain what each of them are. We're not going to use these, but event begin play is the event that's going to trigger when the game actually starts. So that's that one. Event begin overlap. That's very similar to the one that we're going to do, but we need it to be a bit more specific. So that's going to trigger an event when you begin to overlap something. And then the event tick one is something that is being looked at every frame of the game. So it's continually looking for this to be triggered, and then when it does, it will do what you tell it to do. Okay, so rather than just at the start or just when you overlap something, it can happen at any point. Okay, but we're not going to use any of those, you can delete them. What I'm going to do is I'm going to click over here on my collision box, and I'm going to right click in here, and what you've got to think about, there's hundreds if not thousands of options in this list. Okay, I don't expect you to remember or know all of them or anywhere near all of them, just the basic ones for now. So we need to add an event for our box. Okay, so drop it down. The event's going to be a collision, so when we walk into it. Okay, so add on component begin overlap. All right, so when our character begins to overlap that box. Okay, so all we want to happen, so from this thing here, which is the execute, you click and drag that out, opens up another executable actions box, and what the one we want is we want to toggle the visibility. Okay, so often you're not going to know exactly what that's called, and that's the challenge in this, is you need to kind of know what it is you're looking for, but that comes with practice. So we need toggle, and we're going to toggle the visibility. Okay, and we're going to toggle the visibility of this light up here. Okay, so I'm going to drag the light in. Okay, and it gives us a little node for our light, and I connect that up to the target. So you can see what's happening here. It's going to be triggered by the overlap of the collision box. It's going to toggle the visibility of the point light. Okay, so once you're happy with that, come up here and you click the compile button, and if you get this green tick, then you're good to go, as it says. So it's read the code behind all this. It knows it's okay, and it's given you a green tick. Okay, if you don't click that compile button, it won't register any changes that you've made. Okay, when you actually run the game. So make sure you remember to click that. All right. So I've made my blueprint, and I'll drag it into the game. You can see what I made. Okay, if I put it right near the bottom, you can see the light on the ground. I'll actually put it over here where the shadow is, so it's a bit more obvious. Okay, so if I play, I can see my light over there that I added. In fact, actually, I'm going to put it inside the building. That makes sense, doesn't it? Okay, so I can see that boundary box there. So when my character walks in here, it's going to overlap with that box, and it's going to toggle the light. So let's push play over here, and you see it's toggled the light. What it's done is it's turned it off. Okay, and if I come out of it and go back in again, then it toggles it again, and it will continue to do that. Okay, but it's not really the effect I want. I want it to turn on when I go in and then turn off when I leave. So just go back into your blueprint again. So firstly, we notice that the light is on already. So just go to the settings of the light and just have its visibility off at first. Okay, so by default it's off. Then over here it's going to toggle it once, but then when I leave, so go to the collision box, add an event, collision, and then this time it's end overlap. Okay, so when I begin, when I walk in, it's going to do that. When I walk out again, it's just going to do the same thing. So toggle visibility of that same light. Okay, compile it, close it, push play. Now I can walk in, the light turns on, I can walk out and it turns off. Okay, so what I need you guys to do is do the same thing. Make sure you familiarize yourself with how that works. before we move on to anything else more advanced. Okay.